everyone. I am Phoenix Crockett, Managing Director of the Me2 Orchestra of Burlington, and I'm very glad to have you tonight. Before I get started with the spiel and the things that I say, I'd like to ask a quick question. I see so many new faces. For how many of you is this the first Me2 Burlington concert? Wow! That's me up. I love to see it. So, what are we? Who are we? Who am I? Why am I doing this? Once more, we are the Me2 Orchestra of Burlington. There are 3 such orchestras. There is one in Boston, there is one in Manchester, but we were the first. 14 years ago, a man named Ronald Bronstein said, you know what? The barrier to entry for classical music is kind of high. There are fees, of which we have none. There are auditions, of which we definitely have none. And there's a lot of stigma that goes along with being a musician, being a person in the world, and specifically mental illness, right? And that is why we are here. This group of people is a group of people who experience the symptoms of mental illness and those that support them. And the reason that we get together in community spaces and play music is to be advocates in the world of mental health, in reducing stigma, in reducing problems with access related to stigma, especially in the classical music world and in our communities in general. Each week, we get together on Tuesdays and we form an intentional community that doesn't have some of those barriers, right? You can express yourself in a wider variety of ways. You can feel a wider variety of things. You can have problems that are perhaps greater than others are willing to deal with, right? And in classical music and in the world of music, sometimes there is this problem where things have to be perfect, right? And sometimes that can be good for art and music and things, and sometimes it can be not good for community. Not everything is perfect here in this group. Thanks a lot. I will give you 3 examples just off the top of my head from the past 45 minutes of my evening. Example number 1, I did not know that, like all of us right now, this room is healing. I did not know we were going to break our attendance record. I did not know that our lead percussionist and 3/4 of our percussion equipment would be stuck behind a massive fire on Route 7 right now. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in this group. There's no rules. What we're here to do tonight is present you the music that these awesome musicians have worked super, super hard on throughout this season. In the past, when I joined the group in 2014 as a cellist or so, we did a lot of playing in community spaces, elementary school gyms, correctional facilities, the airport, the sidewalk, or whatever it was. We moved away from that in the post-COVID time to try to give ourselves some stability, give ourselves not up to chance, as it were. And I've been the managing director for a few years now, and I was talking with our executive director, Caroline, and we thought, we're going to get back into our communities. And what more community space than this? Here in the heart of Winooski, at the O'Brien Center, at what used to be the Y. We're just really lucky to be here, and we're excited to have all of you. That's a lot of words in a row for me to say. So I'm going to hand things off now to Michael Colburn.
all so much for that very warm and enthusiastic welcome in our very first, and judging by the size of this crowd, perhaps our last concert here in the Bryce. We need to find some spaces with bigger audience capacity. So thank you very much for your patience and indulgence. We obviously weren't expecting a crowd this size, and thank you so much for your goodwill. This is Me2, and a program that we have kind of playfully entitled The Devil Made Me Do It. And that is because each one of the selections in this program has some kind of devilish qualities or connections, including the overture that you just heard by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, his overture to Don Giovanni, one of his classic operas. So Don Giovanni is the Italian translation for the name Don Juan, which may be familiar to some of you. A legendary Spanish figure who was a rake, you might say. He was a womanizer, he was a gambler, he was a cheat, he was just an all-around kind of bad dude. And worst of all, he was totally unapologetic about his lifestyle. In fact, his worst sin in the course of the story is when he murders the father of one of his love interests. And the spirit of this father comes back in the form of a statue, comes knocking on Don Giovanni's door and warns him that he needs to repent. And Don Giovanni won't hear of it. He clings to his libertine lifestyle, will not apologize, and as a result is dragged down to hell by screaming demons. So we can kind of tell what Mozart's message with this story is, right? Well, we're going to segue now to music by the French composer Charles Gounod, an opera that was written about a century after Mozart's, entitled Faust. It was based on the legendary German figure who late in his life kind of regrets many of his decisions and decides to make a deal with the devil, Mephistopheles in this particular story, who makes Faust not only young again, but gives him unlimited wealth and unlimited knowledge. Now, of course, there's a price to pay. There always is in these kinds of stories. But along the way, Faust has a number of incredible experiences and adventures. And that kind of leads me to explain the music that you're about to hear, which is actually from an extended ballet sequence that happens in the opera. Now, one of the interesting things is that this was not originally part of Gounod's opera. He wrote this in 1859, but the ballet music that you're about to hear, he wrote about 10 years later because the opera was being staged at the Paris Opera House. And part of the French operatic tradition is to have an extended ballet sequence of no singing, just dancing. And so Gounod had to create this 18-minute sequence of music that you're about to hear for that presentation, but he also had to work it into the storyline. So the way that he did this was, one of the things that Mephistopheles promised Faust was that he would enjoy the love of the most beautiful women in history. Women with names like Helen of Troy, Cleopatra, a lesser known name, Phryne, who was a Greek courtesan. And he promised this to Faust, and the sequence that you're about to hear is the ballet music in which all of these most beautiful women in the world appear to Faust in this vision. So that's kind of what you can imagine. As you hear this music, you know that's what Gounod was trying to portray, was the sound of Cleopatra and her slaves, or Helen of Troy and her maidens. But you may just picture a French composer feverishly writing away in his attic study as he's trying to get this music ready for the ballet. It doesn't really matter, but it's really lovely and entertaining music that we have enjoyed working on. These are now 7 movements from Gounod's ballet Faust. Ballet music from the opera Faust.
thing I want to say is a thank you to Town Meeting TV. This gentleman here and that camera are at all of our shows, which means that later you can watch it again. And I know and share it with friends and family, and of course, continue to spread our message. So thank you once again for that back there. This next section in your program is called the lived experience, right? So what we want to show you and tell you is a little bit about how this group and our message affects its musicians. And one of the great things about this group is that many of you haven't heard my stories yet. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm awarded the opportunity. So I actually started with this group when I was 19 years old in the year 2014. Don't do the math. At that time, I had a very bad haircut, I was hungover, and I was very much struggling with the symptoms of depression. And I was really struggling to find community in a new town that I had never even visited before I committed to college. And I found this group, the makeup of which was somewhat different, but many of these people were there on my first day. I spent many years playing with the group in the cello section, most often as the stand partner of Alex here. We had a great time. And at one such of those concerts, I believe it was in southern Vermont, if I remember correctly, I had kind of a freak out. And what that freak out was based around was that I left my black shirt on top of my car as I drove to the show, and it was ended up in the street. And not the end of the world, but for me, I know that piles of little mistakes like that are how I know that my mental health is starting to go, right? And so I was feeling a lot of big feelings about this. And in this group specifically, that was the least problem of all time. And I think that was kind of prophetic for some of the things we're experiencing today, for some of the things that we will continue to experience as we put on community shows. That you can have those feelings, you can have those emotions in this space. Caroline had to clean me up and send me on out there. Caroline's our executive director and at the time held my role. Speaking of which, is the person who ended up bringing me a shirt in this room? Yeah, there we are. Yeah, that's great. And it's also a symbol of the kind of acceptance that I was awarded in this group. And I eventually would take over administrative duties and leverage that acceptance and that love into the special thing that we're doing today. I'd love for you to hear from someone that isn't me. So from one of our newest members, Nova, if you'd like to come speak.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of people here to see you.
Oh, thank you for the reminder. This is a big group, but thank you everyone for coming. Friends. So I started playing viola in middle school, and it was something that was super awesome, and I loved it. I was in the orchestra. It was my whole life. And I played a little bit through high school as well. But playing an instrument takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And in the later years in high school, I started, my mental health started declining. So I was experiencing a lot of depression and anxiety, which made it hard for me to practice and play and focus on music. So I ended up playing a lot less, which when you don't practice, you don't sound as good. And hearing myself playing worse over time was also bad for my mental health. So I kind of just put my instrument away for a while and focused on other things, focused on college and helping heal myself. And I decided after finishing undergrad that I wanted to pursue a degree in clinical mental health counseling. And UVM here in Burlington has a program for that. So I moved from California out here to pursue that because I wanted to help people, and especially in the ways that I have been helped by mental health professionals over the course of many years. And I wasn't playing music, but I did bring my viola with me when I moved all the way across the country because I thought maybe I would find a way to use it. And I was busy with school and everything, so I didn't have like a lot of time for music. And I was walking around with a friend in Boston, and we were in the Boston Common, and there was this band playing in the park, and they were just bringing so much joy to everyone walking by. I stopped with my friend. I was like, let's sit and let's just listen to the music for a little bit. This is so nice. And I started thinking like, whoa, wouldn't it be cool if I could be in an orchestra again? Like that was such a big part of my life when I was younger, and I would love to be able to do that again. So in that park, I Googled like Burlington orchestras, trying to find something that I could join just because I was like, I'm ready, I want to get back into this. I emailed Phoenix that day, who responded like, hey, we love violas, come hang out with us. So now I've been here and I love it, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to Phoenix and to Michael and the viola section for being so welcoming to me, and just bringing so much joy and community back into my life.
Which reminds me, if any of you play an instrument, or you know someone who does, reach out to me, phoenix@me2music.org. It's on the program as well. With that, I'll hand it back to the important people.
We're all important here, Phoenix, you know that. So talk a little bit about the music that you're about to hear, which has, again, some connections, not just to our theme, but to the works that you've already heard. So we heard two selections that were taken from opera. This next selection, Phantom of the Opera, is not technically an opera, it's a musical, but it's about opera. And in fact, the story takes place at the Paris Opera House, that very same venue that Gounod had to add his ballet music for the premiere of Faust. And the central character of this story is a young soprano named Christine, who's just a chorus girl at the beginning of the show, but when the diva leaves the stage in a huff one night, she gets her opportunity to sing in the leading role. And she is prepared for this moment, in part because she's been secretly studying with a tutor that she knows only as the angel of music. Well, very quickly we find out that this angel of music is indeed the Phantom of the Opera, who has incredible musical gifts and wants to share these with Christine, but he's also very, very jealous. And so when Christine attracts the attention of a potential lover, the Phantom is not happy, and all sorts of awful things happen. I won't give you the whole libretto, but one little detail I do want to share with you is the fact that the Phantom is a musical genius, and he, at one point in the show, composes a new opera that he wants Christine to star in that's called Don Juan Triumphant. So you remember Don Juan from Don Giovanni, right? Well, clearly the Phantom envisioned a different ending for Don Juan than Mozart did. So that's another point of connection. And then one other little detail, it's been a minute since you heard that opening chord of the Mozart Don Giovanni, but I want you to try to remember that when we play the first chord of this piece, because it is virtually identical. And so I'm convinced this is Andrew Lloyd Webber's kind of tip of the hat to Mozart for kind of knowing what he was doing, and realizing that Mozart probably wouldn't mind if he borrowed that wonderful D minor chord to start this music, to really kind of set the stage for this, this incredible tale of Phantom of the Opera. Talking part.
I'd like to mention one thing before I jump into another tradition of ours. We are a donations-based organization and group. We collect donations at these shows and we fundraise throughout the year. We're currently in the middle of a matching challenge with a wonderful woman named Don Giovanni who has agreed to match up to $2,000 a year of new and increased donations for the next 5 years. So in your program, there's a QR code that you can scan. On the posters, the QR code you can scan to be brought to the donation part of our website. You can also just visit me2music.org or hand any musician that you see cash. Anyone you find, they'll accept that he did it in the right place. We really do appreciate it. At the beginning of the show, you were led through a little breathing exercise. That's one of our longest standing traditions. Another is for us to take some time for a Q&A. Most people have not been in a space with us before. I learned this earlier. And also, it's not always clear what we do or why or how. If you can think of any questions of or related to the group, not related to the group, or anything you want to ask, now is the time for that. So I'll give you a second to think. I used to be a teacher, so I'm good at this. Raise hands. Yes, sir.
So how do members of each deal with the spotlight? You being super.
They're very humble for what they are. I think they're very special. I think they're all special. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do if you don't have somebody to play a specific instrument? Like somebody doesn't sign up for that instrument?
Yeah, sure. We have been so blessed across time in a town of 40,000 people to actually have a fully fleshed out group is honestly completely unbelievable, and no one else can match it. There are times where we'll be missing a little something here and there, and that's up to our music director to kind of smooth over and add and subtract. Orchestral music is kind of built to account for that in a lot of ways. For example, you've just heard an entire concert without the lead percussionist. It's great. It's fine. So,
Phoenix, is it true that this group is the stars of a big, prestigious documentary?
I love when people ask me. He's not a plant, I promise. In 2018? Correct me on that. Sure, we'll say that. A lovely documentary crew hung out with us for a concert season, culminating in a big show where we played the Flynn with the Boston Orchestra all together. It was very fun. Many of these folks were featured. It was called Orchestrating Change. You can type it into Google. It is widely available. More questions from the group.
What if someone wants to play but they don't have their own instrument?
Wonderful. If there is a musician who earnestly plays their instrument and wants to join and for whatever reason can't figure that out, we have figured that out before. We can work with community partners. Vermont Violence has partnered with us on many occasions for such a thing. People have donated instruments over time. I've lent my instrument to a group member at times. We won't let that particular problem be a barrier for musicians.
I don't get the chorus.
That's true. For those who don't play an instrument, but have one built into their bodies, and every single one of you does. If you think that you're not a singer, that's just because you're wrong. That's okay. We have a chorus that meets on Wednesday nights, the day after our Tuesday night rehearsals at 899 Dorset Street, the Faith United Methodist Church. Every single person possible is welcome to that as well, and everyone can sing. Richard.
Who has been here the longest?
Who has been the longest? Who was there on day one? Raise your hand, day oneers. Like, you. Yeah, we have many people who've at least been here for year one. That would make us, wrapping up year 14 now of that. Who's got 10 years? Yeah. I can't wait for the time where I get to have this conversation with the audience and I get to say, who's got 25? And we have the people, you know. More questions.
How often do you guys practice?
Weekly. Weekly from 7 to 9 at Robert Miller Civic Center in the North End.
September through May. We don't
Play this summer. We typically get, we try to get 10 rehearsals to a show in. And yeah, we have kind of 3 sets of shows throughout the year, in a way. Others?
How do you choose the music for each concert?
How do I choose music for each concert?
That's the chef's secret that he never. Yeah, I mean, programming honestly is one of the things I enjoy the most, and I often liken it to the way a chef puts a meal together. If you pick the right music and the right combination and the right order, each piece kind of enhances the next piece, and it's really one of the most enjoyable things that a conductor gets to do. So yeah, it's one of my favorite jobs.
Yeah.
Do you have a theme for the next show?
The theme for the next show is, I'm still playing around with the title, but I think it's going to be something like Carmen and Friends, because the opera Carmen by Georges Bizet turns 150 next year. And so to honor that anniversary, we're going to do a couple of suites from the opera, and then some other operatic pieces that kind of work with that as well. So that's why we're going to call it Carmen and Friends. Carmen and Company. Maybe you should take a vote.
Yes, sir.
Conductor, who's your favorite player?
Being that Mike is married to one of them. That helps. Well, thank you all much for engaging with me on that. We're going to pop into our final piece here. You guys are an absolutely phenomenal audience, and I super appreciate you. With the space that we have here, obviously it's very crowded. It is difficult to manage all of us and get all of our equipment out and things. So with the part where we talk and we socialize and we all be together, we're going to do that in the lobby. And we'll allow the musicians to do what they need to do and come see their families and their friends and things like that. So thank you very much. Once again, Michael Colburn.
Putting together a concert program is a little bit like assembling a menu. So we're going to serve up some dessert for you now. Maybe a little devil's food cake to kind of go with our theme. Sorry, I couldn't leave that one alone. This is a work by Hector Berlioz from his opera Damnation of Faust. It's a march, believe it or not. People don't usually associate marches with operas. And there's a little bit of a story behind his decision to include this march. A few years before he wrote Damnation of Faust, he was scheduled to do a concert tour through Hungary. And the presenter recommended that he program something that the Hungarian people could connect to. And so he found out about this march that was a favorite of the Hungarian culture, and he created his own arrangement of it. And it brought the house down every night. And so when he created the Damnation of Faust, he thought, I've got to find some way to work this march in. It was such a hit. So he rewrote the story so that the main character, Faust, found himself in Hungary at the very moment that the Hungarian army was setting off to battle. And so this is the music that was serenading those soldiers as they went into battle. And Berlioz is right. Every night it brought the house down again as part of the opera. So we hope you enjoy this Hungarian march by Hector Berlioz. Come back again, we'll have more room next time, we promise.